How's it going, everybody? Today we are doing something really fun. We are creating a POC type of setup for CDF or ITOM Platform and OPSBridge Optic Data Lake with Event Analytics 2108 version. So I'll be using a document that I prepared myself over here. It's just shorter. It's on the other screen. But in case there are some differences, between what I'm doing over here and because this is the 2105 version that I have documented for myself. But if I have the 2108 version differs somehow and I'll see mistakes, I'll be correcting them using this interactive guide from the from the optics section. Okay. Okay, and we'll be choosing to use CLI. Although UpHub is nice, but I'll keep it for the next version, right? And I'll move it to the other screen and we'll see everything unfolds over here on our machine over here in the lab environment. Now, spoiler alert, there you will be seeing some passwords and everything, but those are demo environment, those are training environment passwords, so they are not accessible from anywhere else. It's behind like 2 walls or something. So I'm not afraid to expose them, but if you do something similar, please do not do it the same way. Okay, so what we have here, I transferred the files. As you see, there's the suite chart and the CDF itself. And also we are going to have ourselves a Vertica and a worker. And we begin by simply synchronizing the time on all of those 3 servers. Now I'm using my trusty multi-SSH over here, but basically those steps that I'm about to perform, you need to perform them on every single machine separately. Okay, but I can afford to do it like this. Okay, so as you see, the command is executed on all 3 nodes simultaneously, which is fun. Okay, let's see if we have cronny. Probably we do. And there it goes. Nothing to do. Okay, so those are all 3 based on the same template. So I'll just continue doing this. I'll create the drift file and I'll do this. Then I need to fill in the drift file with all of those things. And here I'll have to use the SSH session. As you see, those steps are documented very precisely in the documentation, so there is no deviation. And then we are going to set the time zone on all 3 of the machines to UTC. And this is super important. And in fact, I might want to do the same thing with OBA and collector later. I'm not really sure. Okay, now I'll go with this and I'll start the cronny D. Okay, so far we are into what, 10 commands or something, and we are still dealing with the time, and this would yield very good results for us later. Okay, so I'm going to restart cronny D. Let's see the time date CTL, and I want to see that it is matching my settings. So yes, UTC on all 3 of them, the settings got on. That's pretty nice, and we are going to do a thing like this. All right, so next step would be installing all the prerequisites on master and worker. This is a yum command, and I don't want to do the same thing on Vertica, so I'm going to disconnect for now. And while there is small difference between the commands that I'm about to execute, the yum install, there's like a couple of packages. I prefer to install all of the master packages on workers too, because it's just adds a couple of those, and then I don't need to think in terms of separating the workflow between master and worker. So let it run for a second. Okay, there it is. It is done. Let's see. And the last step would be running yum update. Now I don't have to do this step, but I prefer to do it because my environment can connect to internet via proxy, I know that not everybody in their production environments can afford to do this, and they have to maintain the versions of their OS and updates through IT. But if I can afford to do it at the moment, I'll just do it. So there it is, it's running. Let's skip that part. All right, and this is done too. So now we are done. We're going to specific modifications, right? So one of the things that we need to verify on our host that is IPv6 routing is disabled like this with a comment out on the IPv6 addresses in hosts. So I already have this set up by default in all of my setups. Another thing is modpro BR netlifier. This is also one of those modifications that we need to do. So this is how I enable it by running this command, but it would not be saved in if I reboot the server. So I'll run this echo command, which would add this to BR netlifier command for the future. And now when we run it to test it, let's see if we see the result. There it is, it exists. Okay, now we will modify the sysctl conf with all kind of changes that we want. And I say all kind because it includes a lot of changes. Let me show it to you here. Now, if you go to the official documentation, it would be a little bit separated by topics, but basically we modify the IP tables parameter and we enable IP forwarding, and also we modify some kernel sizing over here. Okay, and I'll do the exact same thing on both machines and then just save it. Now, why do I do it in the same command? Well, because experience. Of course, if you'll be doing it from official documentation, you'll just have to do it several times, but I recommend you keep notes, and this way, next time you don't need to repeat the steps. Okay, and now we apply them like this, and here they are, all appear in the list. Okay, now we need to unzip everything on master. Oh, come on. Let's see. Okay, so I'll unzip those two things in the same command. Okay, they will have folders of their own. And let's skip forward. And in fact, it's a zip inside a zip over here, so I need to unzip this one as well. So let's do this, unzip, and unzip, unzip, right, like this. All right, and now we have everything. So we'll go to the folder that was unzipped, and now we need to create the logical volumes. Okay, so here are the setup NFS commands, and I'm just going to create all the folders in the same command, and you actually can copy paste the same sequence for the default location in the official documentation. And while my setup would be using only 5 out of 7 that it creates, I'm still creating all of them. Just want to standardize the process, and even if a couple of folders are created in vain, they are not occupying any space and they're not bringing in any unwanted attention when you work on your admin tasks or anything. So just why not do it like this? Empty folders are not intimidating. Okay, and one of them got forgotten. This is the one. Okay, and then let's see the result, and here are all of them. Now I'm going to modify the NFS settings. And since I'm using a master worker as my NFS and POCs, I have to use this variation, but in your normal NFS, external NFS, you don't have to try it. So 4.2 version of NFS has a bug that would lock the file system out or make locks in it that you cannot read when there are just too many read-write operations. And since we have databases in our ITOM platform and Optic and everything, it might be just a little bit overwhelming for it. and also it's writing all of the metrics and whatnot. Although we use external Vertica, still it's better to do this because it will just not get locked, and you would not need to investigate real weird things that actually can be fixed only by rebooting the system. Okay, and I'm doing it only on master. Okay, oh, come on, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to do this thing, systemctl. Okay, so we applied the settings. Now, proxy settings are also important, but they are very unique to every one of us. Some of us don't need to use them. And for me, I just like to replace this line with a new one. But you need to make sure that all your proxy is configured as you need it to be. And now we will apply all of those settings, whatever I changed on both with master and worker. It's a su and dash. Okay, and now we're going to do something really weird. So COSO requires a local provisional volumes, and we're going to use the default procedure for MNT/disks. That's going to be their location, and we're going to mount them. The point is that you need to allocate the disk space for them, and then you kind of mount them as file systems and everything. Now, I'm using the slow version of this. You're going to need to use the dd command, but there is a fallocate command that we can use instead. But I prefer to use the dd because it applies to all of the CentOS versions that I might use. So this one is CentOS 8.3. But it would work on 7.9, 7.8, 7.7. So I'm not altering this command, although it takes, I don't know how long it takes, but it takes some time to work. And 1 second, let me just copy it from the wrong location. But believe me, if it works, don't touch it. Even if it takes like 5 minutes of your life, 10 minutes, that's fine. Okay, so I'll just execute both of those commands. And what it does, it basically here, it creates a 16 gigabyte volume, then it would create an 8 gigabyte volume and another one under 3 different names. Then it would basically create the directories to mount them to, set up the file system of those files that we created with this dd command, and then mount it to the system. Okay, so it runs for like 5 minutes, I believe, if it's unobstructed by some other read-write operations. So let's skip directly to that part. All right, and it was done actually in like 2 minutes, which is really great. So the last thing to do is, of course, edit the FS tab. Let's see that worker is done as well. Yeah. So we're going to edit FS tab. So the settings would be resumed properly after a reboot of the system. Okay, so there we are. I'm doing this and I'm doing that and saving my work. All right, and last thing to do is to set up ownership. Everything is set to 19999, as you see. That's the preferred method. You can use any digit up to high 60s, I believe, and still it would work. Okay, and now we need to do a thing over here. So let me go and I'm on worker. Come on, there we go. List the directory. So let me take its name for my document over here, which I modify as we go. Oh, come on, what's going on with my keyboard? Oh, right. I'm in the wrong location. Okay, there we go. Just let me modify the document real quick. So we're going to go into this directory, and this is not how it works. We go into this directory and list the contents. All right. So now we need to modify the install properties. So nano install properties. And this is a very important file. So normally you don't need to modify too much, although I guess customers' production environment might be very, very aggressive on changing those settings here and there. But for me, it's going to be pretty easy. I just want the proxy, which is right over here. Okay, why do I need the proxy? Because I'm going to download images in here as it is right now. Okay, so it means that I'll just modify it over there. And I'll just copy paste the prepared statements. And I'll set the no proxy to local addresses. And something like that. And another thing is going to be the CIDR. Here it is, pod CIDR. Now, what is CIDR? This is the internal network definitions, right? So pods, if I leave this unaltered, all pods internal network would be starting like this, okay? 172.16, class B. And for some weird reason, this is exactly what I'm using in in my environment. Okay, so I'm going to change it to something very different, like 30, so there would be no overlap. Okay, and also I remember the services kind of were overlapping as well. So to do this, I'll just change the services to 173 because I believe there was some overlap there as well. Although it's supposed to class A and should not be interacting with class B network, still it's a thing. Okay, so this is what I'm modifying in the whole overall file, and I just save. Okay, now we need to define several things in a file. So the content of the file, the contents of the file are exist in the production in a visual documentation as well. But I'm going to create a new document somewhere here. Okay, and what I'm going to do, I need to modify it slightly in a way that would match my environment. Now, there are several examples of this in documentation, and basically I'm going to use it like this, control replace, and I'm going to replace it all with masteritom.com. Okay, and let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places. Okay, and the experienced guys would say, hey, what about the worker? I mean, this setting, empty master node means that you use single master, but you do have a worker, but when you leave it empty, it means that the master, about worker on master is going to be the same worker, but where's the other worker? And I just prefer to add workers manually after the fact. It's just easier for me to separate it in terms of workflow, and it's kind of easier to navigate rather than try to create those complex files with all the additional settings and everything. So yeah, so I'm just going to copy all of this as it is, and you'll see why, because here I need to modify the JSON and use the examples and add like 5, 6 lines for that thing and then maintain it and make sure that everything is right. While for adding workers later, it's just a single command that I can use. It's just so easy. Okay, so let me create the file locally. I'm not going to try to save it on a Windows machine, transfer it to Linux. I'm just going to copy paste the whole file, and I will go and config.json. Okay, and I'm just copy pasting the whole thing into this file and exiting. That's all. And now we need to go ahead and 1 second. Actually, I need to do a thing over here. Okay. Now we'll go and check that we are in the right place, and we are in the right place. Okay. And I'm going to run the install command. Okay. Now it will run some checks, prerequisite checks and everything. Let's see that there are no deviations between the 05 and 08 version, because I use the 05 document. And seems then that there are none, so I'm going to run this Helium thing that I have, confirm the password, and there it goes. So now this thing, in the past, if you remember, it was taking like 5 minutes, 8 minutes. Now it takes like 15, 20 minutes. The product grows and matures, so it becomes bigger. So it will run like this. It will upload the images and do everything else. And let's just see the end result. All right, so there it is. It is done, and we have our core namespace installed. So what we need to do right now is do a little bit more of tidying up, like adding the YAM completion, bash completion tool, and we want to also add a little bit of out of the box command send, for example, the CDF alias, which we can use later on. And now we'll just go to the main directory. We'll do su my dash to apply all of the new system variables that we added. And now we are going to add the worker. And the command is pretty simple. There is like this CDF CTL, and we say node add node, and basically it will say, well, what's the username and what's the password. And now it will deploy the all of the Kubernetes bits on the worker, attach it to the whole CDF thing over here, and it's just going to be pretty nice. Okay, so for example, if we watch the nodes over here in a minute or so, it will add the worker bits as well. Basically, it's copying the whole setup to worker, it's installing Kubernetes, and then it will be added over here, which is super nice. Okay, so we are not done yet. We are not done yet, because the next step would be configuring actually Vertica and deploying the OPSB suite on it, but that's a topic for a separate video. So I'll see you in the next one.